All right. Um, Wayne McRoy, thank you for being on Radiant Creators. First time. And I recently was listening to the Higher Side Chats, and you came on, and it was amazing. I really dug it. I'm a member of the Higher Side Chats. So I got to hear the whole 2 hours, all the good stuff, and then listen to some more of your material and checked out your site and your many different places that do have a presence on the internet, and thought, wow, let me ping this guy and see if he'd come on. And you were gracious enough to. So, Wayne McRoy, thank you for being on Radiant Creators. And I noticed, what an interesting synchronicity. You just sent out a post, and it was really touching. It's kind of a synchromistic thing in itself. You mentioned on your the alchemical beacon on Substack, and it's all linked in the show notes. You'll see it underneath the video. You mentioned what's so civil about war anyway, and you have a quote from Smedley Butler, who everybody knows. War is a racket. Then you linked to the Guns N' Roses song "Civil War," and that was really. Uh, Quite the experience, because it's funny. I was in the military when I was a kid. I was a soldier of colonialism, and I so I'm dating myself a little bit here. But when that song came out, we were sitting in the desert, around the tank, listening to it. And so when I heard it again, it was quite. I went, wow, this is very, very meaningful. That song really meant a lot to us when we were out in the desert, because we didn't want to be there, you know and the song, it something about it really spoke to us. So thanks for happening to just post that. So anyway, I've talked enough. How are you doing tonight?
Well, thanks, Craig, for having me on. It's always a pleasure to get on new podcasts and appear in different places where people may have not come across my work before. So I appreciate you having it on. And I'm an old school metalhead, so I've always liked those hard rock classics and stuff like that. And that particular song from Guns N' Roses, it does have an awful lot of inherent meaning in it when you look at the state of the world today, and you realize that there's a lot that goes on in the background behind the scenes that we're not privy to, and oftentimes the things that we wind up getting involved with aren't on the up and up, and that's just the case with that. And the whole point is war and violence and all of these things are just so totally unnecessary. But there are these dark powers in this world that seem to keep beating the war drums over and over again. And it's not that I don't respect anybody who has that military calling or anything. I most certainly do. I respect that a lot. Oftentimes, though, they go in there under false pretenses and they don't realize the false pretenses. And oftentimes, when you talk to them later in life, they come to realize, hey, you know what? That wasn't what they told us it was all about. And they walk away a different person, a changed person, because of all of that. So yeah, it's interesting that you happen to find that, because I didn't really post that recently. It just kind of got reposted recently.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's from a couple of years back when they were really pushing the whole Civil War in America kind of narrative at that point. But
Mm.
Smedley Butler is somebody that I respect and admire for the way he stood up and called it out for what it is, and really made a difference in how things became manifest in this world from that time since, and how we today we can have these examples in the past we could look back at and say, you know what, one person can make a difference. And that's, I think, an important message for people today. I'm just one person. What can I do? Well, one person ultimately can make a difference in the historical narrative of things. So anyway,
Yeah.
like I said, I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, yeah. Well, um and I do think, one of the things that we can do kind of in our own, Civil War kind of way, because we don't want a civil war or any wars, but I think that one of our, I know it's something people ponder quite a lot. They what can I do? And I really think that, well, being aware of people like Wayne McRoy and reading his material, and listening to him is one of the many things you can do. Because I really think that waking up, and it's a bit of a heady term when you say that, being awake, but we all everyone who listens to this show is a little bit crazy, and they understand what I mean by awake. It's not some egotistical thing, you know. But when you're awake and you're working on that, you're huffing and puffing, you're working on being a little bit wiser, you know, and having more of a connection to, you know, God, I am, source, whatever a person wants to call it. Um, then I think that might be the most revolutionary act that a person can do to fight the archons, the system. That, you know, what more? I don't know what else we can really do. It will all come from there. Whatever we're supposed to do in the world as an outward expression.
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole point. I always tell people, be the change that you want to see in the world. That's where it
Mm,
starts. It starts with looking at yourself in the mirror and realizing, hey, you know what? I've been complicit and complacent with this whole system and the way of things in society and culture. And you need to make that change yourself and be the example, be that shining light on the hill for other people to see so that they could understand that, yes, things can change, but change starts within. Doesn't come from externally somewhere. It all has to be something that you find for yourself. And each of us has our own unique individual spiritual path that we are all on. And we need to seek after that connection with God, with source, with whatever, like you said, people want to call God all different things. I refer to him as God. He's God. Let's put it that
yeah.
way. And we have that, we can have that communion and that connection with God. And that all starts from seeing the need in our own heart to have that connection, because a lot of people seek in all the wrong places for some type of an ulterior or alternative to that connection with God, with source. And they look all
Mm,
kinds of external places, and they look at all different kinds of things, and they find that nothing satisfies quite like that spiritual connection, that one-on-one connection. So that's what it's all about, our relationship with our creator. And that's what everything actually emanates from, is that from that relationship. And we can only make a fundamental change in ourselves by finding that connection. And how do we do that? Well, we find what's our calling.
mm,
That's part of it as well. So whatever your calling is, if you wholeheartedly seek that, and the Bible tells us, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. I found that to be absolutely true in my life. So when you put God first and that connection and relationship with God first, all the other things, all the other minutia falls into place for you, and doors begin to open for you where there was none before. And some would call this synchronicity, but it's all part of our spiritual path that we are walking. And when you are aligned with what your calling is, with what God's mission for you here is on this earth, then things begin to open up for you and things begin to happen where you don't see a way. He makes a way for you. And I've seen that personally in my own life so many different times. And I never would have thought this is something I would be doing. I was
mm,
never, I've always been an introvert. And now
mm.
I reach thousands of people every week on the internet. Go figure.
Yeah.
So who would ever think of such a thing, you know? But at any rate, that's where it all begins. It begins, we need to acknowledge, you know what, I need to have that right connection and relationship with my creator. And I need to find out what it is I'm doing here and why. And once you do
Mm,
that and you start to walk that unique path, and everybody's path is different. You might be called to something entirely different than somebody else. And that's fine. That's how it's supposed to be. That's all part of the natural order of things. And this is part of the cycles of time and the cycles of change that we go through in this school, this harsh school that is the earth. So
yeah.
sometimes it's harsh, but we can find our way through all of it by having that rightful connection, knowing what it is that we're here for. And a lot of people are seeking purpose. And that's ultimately how you find
Mm,
purpose. It's through that connection to God. And once you have that connection, then he'll open your eyes to what his purpose is for you. Might not be
yeah.
necessarily what you wanted for yourself initially. I know my path is totally different than what I ever thought it was going to be, or what I ever thought I wanted it to be when I was younger. But certainly, no regrets as far as that stuff goes for me. But
Mm.
anyway, I know you wanted to talk a lot about maybe some of the more metaphysical things. So
Yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
interested to hear where you want to go with the conversation here.
Yeah, and so what you're saying reminds me of, of course, Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss, and like you mentioned, and doors will open. And so, yeah, that is really the key. Well, one of the things I was thinking, I have, some notes, and we'll run through things, make best use of the time, but yeah, definitely what we're seeing right now as we enter the year of the fire horse, which is quite, well, it's fiery, that's for sure, um, and as we were just talking about, as we were just mentioning, to follow your bliss, to find that your path, it seems that um, since we're kind of using some biblical references, like as you walk through the shadow, the valley of death. How's that one go? As I walk through the, you know
As
what
I
I
walk
mean?
through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear
Y-
no evil. That one.
Yes, so I know who walks with me. So I think that this might be a time where everybody really kind of needs that, because the world's as crazy as I've ever seen it, so far. This is probably max craziness, I think. Or at least definitely one of the highlighted crazy times. And yet it does seem that our way to combat the craziness is to follow our own bliss. What are we here to do? And that's what the idea was, to maybe help people have the ability to do that, like a little, wisdom towards those ends. Because I think that if you're not locked into the I am, to yourself, and you're not getting that inspiration, you're not getting those downloads, then I think it's just, maybe sometimes that works. You can kind of be a jellyfish in the ocean getting swept around. But right now, the tide, I don't believe, is really correct for that. That's not going to work. You're going to have that mission, um, as you walk through the shadow of, well, all the evils that are happening right now. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
certainly.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, we are living in some very interesting times for sure. And we're coming to an absolute crossroads in the
Mm,
cycles of time that we're in, where we're going to have to make a decision one way or another. You're going to be forced to make some decisions. And ultimately, there's no avoiding that. This is all part of the natural law premises that we live under. At some point, you are forced to make a decision. And we're getting to the precipice of that, where we're going to be forced to choose which way we want to go. If we want to go the spiritual path and achieve our full potentiality as what it means to be fully human, we could do that, or we could go the other road, which is the road that the controllers of this world, those dark occultists who run things here in this world, are trying to force on us. And this is what the transhumanist philosophy is all about. And that's the goal of separating entirely from any spiritual concern whatsoever and following this road into the hyper materialist paradigm. And they give us all these false promises, and they are false promises of ascension and this kind of thing in this transhumanist notion. So they're trying to build a post-human era. And we could talk about some of the philosophies that have been around for a long time that will tell you with no uncertain terms what this really is about. So that's essentially the other option we're given, walking away from being human and becoming something different, what they call the post-human or the post-human era, humanity 2.0. They claim it's the next step in human evolution, but it's all based on lies and fallacies, and it's based in hyper materialism. It's based upon turning your back on spiritual concerns of any type. It's the absolute denial of the spiritual, and
mhm.
it's not what we're really destined to do as human beings. But we are allowed that choice. That is one of the gifts, one of the greatest gifts that God has given us, our creator has given us, is free will. So we have the choice. We have the choice. Do we want to turn back towards the spiritual ascension that we should rightly be on at this point in the cycles of time, or do we want to walk away from that and go this alternative route that the technocrats and the dark occultists who run things are trying to steer us into, and go the transhumanist route, which researchers and philosophers of the past, like Rudolf Steiner, called the eighth sphere. And
Yes.
in the Hermetic teachings, they call this the world of shells. It's an
Mm,
empty vessel, the world of shells. This is what it's all about. Michael Hoffman, a great researcher and writer, and some of your listeners may be familiar with his works, him and James Shelby Downard. He spoke of what this is. He calls it the reign of dead matter, and he couldn't be any
wow.
more correct about that. So this is actually all these death-based ideas that they're trying to steer us into in this post-human future. And certainly we've seen in the recent revelations from the Epstein files, which many
Yes.
of us have known for years, that this world is run by a satanic death cult. That's what they're absolutely about. They've programmed into our language these death-based ideas. Think about it. We have a sort of corporate identity. And think of the word corporate. Corpse is the root word, a dead entity. That's what a corporation is. That's what a corporate identity is. And we have this straw man identity that they give us as well. So we have all of that. It's a legal fiction. You know, your driver's license or whatever
Yes.
identifying documents you have, there, your name's all in caps. That's your legal fiction. It's a dead entity. And that's what they've been slowly indoctrinating us into over the course of time. They want to steer man away from any spiritual concerns and lead him down this path of hypermaterialism into this dead entity state. That, and like I said, Rudolf Steiner called this the eighth sphere. And, you know, maybe we'll get a little bit more into cosmology and I could explain a little better what the eighth sphere ideology comes from, like why they call it the eighth sphere as opposed to something else. I think the Hermeticists capture the whole image of it very aptly by calling it the world of shells, because that's what it is. It's an empty shell, no spirit, devoid of soul. And essentially, that's what the technocrats and dark occultists in this world are trying to build, because they want to be the gods of this world in no uncertain terms. They want to be the ones with absolute control of everything and everyone from cradle to grave.
Yeah.
So that's
And
essentially what they're trying to build, something where there's no spiritual component to it, because they want only their spirit to be able to manifest and do what it wants within that. So they want automatons, essentially. They want people to be automatons, have no free will principle of their own. That's why they always push for this collectivism or communism or communitarianism, socialism, all these things. They're all code words for the same kind of thing. It's all about collectivism. It's the hive mind mentality. And that is most certainly what they're attempting to build through the use of modern technologies in this way. It all ties back to the occult. This is something I always have to tell people all the time, and I sound like a broken record, but every time, when you go into delving deeper into any of these types of conspiratorial type concepts, for lack of better terminology, you will always invariably land in two places. Number one, the occult. Number two, transhumanism. It's the big granddaddy of all conspiracies going on in the world today. It's absolutely at the core of everything. And they're related because the transhumanist singularity that they're pushing for, this post-human era, is the fulfillment of everything they've talked about in the occult in the past. So it's the whole gamut of the cycles of time and the things they want to achieve here. Now, this is a small group of people that are kind of constitute what I would refer to as a breakaway civilization. These dark occultists who run things and their minions just beneath them, the technocrats. This is how I try to describe them, because it's layered. It's a
yeah.
layered control structure. And there are people that are fully aware of the spiritual connotations at the very topmost levels, but the vast majority of them have no spiritual concerns whatsoever, and they just go along to get along and are looking for worldly power and influence and think that somehow they could achieve the ultimate goal of immortality, physical immortality first and foremost, and total absolute control of everything, godlike power. And they think they could achieve this through this transhumanist singularity. So this is the intersection of modern science and the old occult sciences. And they meet together in this whole paradigm. And this is what we're looking at coming to fruition in the world today. It's all about building towards this. So I know I just said a lot there, and I think I may have interrupted your stream.
Not at all. No, not at all. It's perfect. And something that I'm reminded of when you're talking is how something I'm seeing coming back in style is the company town, you know, where it used to be the company town was, you know, like a coal mine or something like that. But now we're seeing this in what used to be the somewhat affluent, like your upper middle class and up, would have been people working in IT and information technology, people working at companies like Apple and such. And I think it's Menlo Park. I forget where, somewhere up in it's Northern California, the main Apple office. I'm not, or one of the smaller ones. I'm not sure, but they actually have, I guess, like a parking lot, a big parking lot that they leased so that people can live in their trailers and cars who work there. And they
Yeah.
go, and the people who are like, oh, they're so benevolent. Look what they're doing for us. And you start thinking, wait a second, it wasn't that long ago before you were the affluent. I mean, when Jobs was around and the iPad was coming out and like the Apple One and all this, that would have been like the place to be. And I'm sure nobody was really worrying about money at that time. And they're living in houses and they had families and things like this. And now you're kind of, well, family's out the door. Yeah, that's not going to happen because you're living in your car so that you can work for Apple. And you see it with the big mega AI data centers now, and you see it in chip manufacturing. You really are literally seeing the company town and the company store. It's back.
Right. The
Yeah.
old tricks are the best tricks. That's
Yeah.
what they always go back to the same basic playbooks. See, this had worked for them very well in the past, and when you take away people's options, well, then it works even better for you. I mean, look at the rent prices and the housing prices and everything today. Look at how they are. So there's a lot of people that would jump at the opportunity to maybe have housing or some type of a situation like that provided for by the company, that they work for. And it's kind of it's a way in which these companies tend to thrive. This is what they did back in the old times, the industrial age, the onset of the first industrial age here in America. The company would build a whole town around the company, the plant, and the workers. They would rent houses from the company. So the company would give them the paycheck, and then they would pay a portion of that paycheck back to the company for rent for their house. And they would go down to the company owned general store and buy
Yes.
what they needed down there, paying the company back. So the company is the only one that ultimately benefits from it. And very little do the workers benefit from that. So it's the same type of model coming back in. But the thing is, if they're slick enough, people don't necessarily realize that it's the company town or that they're,
Yeah.
they're paying into the company store and the company's getting back all its wages from you. So essentially, you're working for free. And this is
Exactly.
something that it's kind of like a form of indentured servitude, if you want to go that far in the description of it. But this is actually one of the ways in which they could make this operate is through the purposeful tanking of the economy, which is going on as we see.
Oh, yes.
It forces people's hands. I really don't honestly know how a lot of these younger people can actually even afford to live. I mean, you look at the rents and the mortgages and everything these days, how high they are, and the wages haven't really kept up with the inflationary rates and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know how they can even keep their head above water. A lot of them can't, so they wind up in debt, in perpetual debt. And this is wherein they have you. So if they have a situation where they say, okay, well, if you work for our company, we have this housing development right by the company, like the company offices, and you could get a discount in your rent there or something. You could live there for relatively cheap, and people will jump on that. So it's
Yeah.
certainly something to keep an eye on, especially since there's a lot of private investors and stuff that have been buying up the real estate in America, especially at
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's the
it's
thing where you.
concerning.
Oh, yeah, and if you're not working at the company town, if you're not living and working, if you're not living in the company town and working for the company, then you're living in the 15-minute city, which is not much different. It's just a, yeah. Well, you did mention Rudolf Steiner and the Eighth Sphere, and I'm definitely, familiar with Ahriman, and it does seem that, yeah, we are really becoming either, this is a time where we're going to either be the machine human, like the aesthetic human, just simply on the surface human, um, and aesthetic human that comes from Days of Noah. He's got a great YouTube channel and dives deep into these things. And so that's what I think an interesting topic is, how do the awake, stay free as we go through this transition, because I do think at the other end of this, I don't know, I guess maybe 2030 or something like that, or maybe it's going to take longer. I do think we're seeing the fall of the Western civilization, and I think we're seeing something new that's happening. So we are in a moment of downright decline. Anyone who, if you buy groceries, that our civilization's done, right? We have issues, and something else has to happen, and that civil war is a civil war of awareness. And how do we make it through to the other side? Because I really feel that, the trick right now is to thrive, be happy, be healthy, be wise. Really, like if you can find a greenhouse somewhere, like a little bit of land, and you can grow your own stuff. I mean, the more self-sufficient you can be, the more streams of income that you can have that aren't, going and working for the company town, like the better. So it seems like we know what to do. I think one of the hardest things is keeping your vibe up, keeping that connection, because it is work. Following your bliss is hard, but you don't do when it's hard. You never do when it's easy. And I feel like we're in the hard part right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are the solutions. I mean, you pretty much nailed it. That's
Yeah.
what we have to do. Maybe own a little bit of land, know how to grow some food, have some skills, have some storable foods, these kind of things, common sense things. Maybe invest in some real world assets. Real
Yeah.
estate's a good one. Gold, silver, if you could get your hands on some of that, just to have it, just in case things go south. I think one of the main things that we as a collective group can do to really stave off a lot of the control that they're looking for, and the onset of this panopticon control grid they really want to put in place for everybody, is we need to insist that we keep some physical means of exchange.
Yes.
Cash is king. So this is a common sense kind of idea that if we all could apply it, it would really make a big difference, because they're pushing for everything digital. They want digital currency. They want programmable digital currency. And that's what this whole push with cryptocurrency and everything has all been about. It's to try to grease the skids to get people to accept this. And of course, the introduction of credit cards and all of those things, when you go back through the timeline, it's all leading to that same place. They want a cashless society. But we need to insist, we need to maintain cash as a physical means of exchange, even if it's a fiat currency, which people always use the argument. It's a fiat currency. Yeah, but it's something physical you could hold in your hand and go down to the gas station down at the end of the block and give them this, and they give you stuff that you might need. This can't be done
Mm-hmm.
when the power goes out otherwise, if you're all on an electrical grid. And we've
Yeah.
seen examples of this during some of these like hurricanes and stuff like that, these natural disaster events that have happened, where the power grid's been down in an area for a long time and people can't do business anymore because the power's out. Well, I've worked enough. I'm old enough that I to go back to the times when you punched in the manual cash register and you figured out the change and stuff in your head, and you were able to still do business if the power went out, if the lights were out. I worked in retail. We were still able, with if the power was out, people could still shop. You had to put the little price
Yep.
sticker. You had to add it all up on the cash register by hand, and you print their receipt and hand them their change, cash only, out the door. You could still do business. Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. In this new electronic age, you can't do business anymore. So if something happens and the grid's down, well, you're out of luck. And you know what? That's not practical in a lot of ways. And we see the example with natural disasters. That's one reason why that's not practical. Another thing that's not practical, and this is something that gives me a lot of hope, is I've worked for corporate America. I know how
Mm-hmm.
greedy these businesses are. They don't like to have downtime. They don't like to be down for the day. They don't want to be losing that business for the day. So I think it's in their best interest too to have common sense backup systems, analog backup systems where they could
Yeah.
still get the job done and do business and still bring in money when those types of situations happen. And this is offering a service to people because people could still get stuff they need them. But this is all incumbent upon keeping a physical means of exchange. And that's where I think the key is. If we could get enough people on board with that idea to buy local, use cash, and that kind of thing, and have, if they're small business owners, have a contingency plan. If things go south like that, be able to operate in an analog system. And this is something I find hugely concerning with our current healthcare system too. Everything's gone digital, everything's gone to the computer. They don't even maintain those manual physical records anymore like they once did. So that's concerning in and of itself. They need to get back to using the analog filing system, going back to pen and paper. And I think a lot of these common sense approaches are things that could really help us to stave off this coming panopticon control grid that they want to put in place. Although
Yeah.
these technologies can be beneficial, they're tools like anything else. They could be used for good or for bad. The problem is when you become too dependent upon that tool to sustain you, and you don't know how to do anything for yourself anymore, there's a problem. So, like I said, common sense things, maybe own some real estate, own some real valuable, tangible things that have intrinsic value, and learn some skills, learn how to grow your own food. That's the big thing. Don't let them starve you out. If they can't starve you out, you're good. So maintain some stores of storable foods, common
Mm-hmm.
sense approaches to things. That's something that's largely missing in the world today is common sense. And that's a sad state of affairs. We need to get back to common sense measures and analog systems as backups.
Mm.
Real common sense type ideologies like that in
Yeah.
order to maintain our own type of presence here in this coming digital age that they're trying to build. So
Yeah.
we can have all that stuff. We just have to be the ones to start to set the example and build that. That's why I'm all about physical books. I like
Yes.
physical analog books. This is the only way we could absolutely store information over the long term without it being corrupted in many easy ways, like everything on the internet is these days. So that's why I've actually made a lot of my podcast episodes. I've turned them into transcripts, book transcripts, and I sell
Mm.
them in book form so that people, if they want to hold on to that physical record, that analog record of important ideas that have been said, they can have that because it's bound to happen sooner or later where everything digital can be manipulated. I mean, George Orwell told us about this in 1984. The memory hole, things go down the memory hole, happens very easy when all you got to do is click a button and it disappears from the internet forever.
Mm.
Think about that. Or even more so, what they could do is they could go in and change the script
Yes.
with the internet. They could change it, and then nobody would know any different in the future. Whereas you
Mm.
can't do that as easily with a physical book. So we need to
Yeah.
maintain some analog types of records of things as well. So common sense ideas like that, I think we could really institute some changes there if we could get enough people on board for doing those kind of things.
Oh yeah. I think analog's making a comeback, and it's even coming back with the I guess Gen Z, like younger people. There's a kind of a desire for the analog. I think you can almost have a cool T-shirt, analog power. As a matter of fact, that'd be a cool podcast. Somebody could create just analog power, because I guess if you're old enough to have to have been around when like Civil War was first, when Guns N' Roses first released that, you're probably Gen X, I'd imagine, and so one of the advantages that I guess say like the Gen X generation has is that they really had they lived in both worlds. We spent time in an analog world. We lived an analog, life. We had maybe you had 8 tracks, maybe you even had a reel to reel, definitely had cassette tapes, definitely had records, you know. You used a rotary phone, and you didn't really like you weren't texting anybody. Like your parents just said, be home at 3:30. You had to watch, a whole different way of existing. Like, okay, I'll meet you at 3:30 at the mall by this store. We lived a very, very different life for a while, and then, we had the advantage of, then technology came along as it is, because I do think it's got to be hard for the youngsters who, I mean, they grew up on iPads, like they never had lived an analog life at all. And that I think, oh, I feel like a lost generation or something like that, because I don't know how you make that transition. You can to analog, but yeah, I'm thankful to have grown up analog and then digital came along. Like there was no neural link when I was a kid that
Right.
I know of.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. We grew up, our generation grew up before the time of the internet. Like there was
Yeah.
no internet back then. And I think we developed a lot of valuable life skills because of that. And now
Yeah.
this generation coming up now, they've never known a time without the internet, without all this constant connectivity all the time, constant communication. It's information overload. That's kind of the time frame we're living in. It's the
Mm.
age of big data. And of
Yes.
course, along with big data comes big surveillance. And that's certainly
Yes.
a lot of the issue that we have here today. But we lived before that was all a thing. So
Yeah.
we know what life could be like without all of that. We know what it's like to not have somebody looking over your shoulder or monitoring what you're doing 24/7. You know, we had a little bit of downtime, and we did stupid things when we were kids, but there wasn't somebody recording us doing it and a permanent record of it out there. So yeah,
Yeah.
we learned our lesson and we didn't repeat those mistakes, right? But now that's not even an option for this generation growing up today. Everything,
Yeah.
everything's recorded now. It's just unbelievable. And even if you don't think it's being recorded, it likely is because there's a lot of back doors and all these technologies and stuff that we have now. Even just if you go out in the community, there's cameras everywhere.
Oh,
This never
yes.
used to be a thing. And it's ridiculous. It's a surveillance state at this point, and it's only going to get worse. And they collect all of your metadata and stuff on the back end of everything, so they know
Mhm.
more about you than you know about yourself. There's dossiers on each and every one of us. That's something people don't seem to realize. They already
Yeah.
have a social credit score for everybody. They just
Yes.
haven't openly rolled it out yet. So they know what you're going to do with a 98% certainty tomorrow. They could tell you probably what time you're going to wake up, where you're going to go, where you're going to be at what time, what you're going to be doing. This is all tools that they have. They use these data analytics to get this stuff done. They have some very sophisticated algorithms and computer programs that can actually map all this stuff out. Individual nodes on a network. This is exactly how they track and monitor us. These technologies exist now, and they're only getting more and more invasive as time goes on. And that's the
Yeah.
key here. So eventually it's going to get to be where the next big thing you'll see will be pre-crime
Yes.
predictions. And
Minority Report. Yeah.
they've already done this. This was actually something that Palantir rolled out as a test in New Orleans in 2012. They did this. They used predictive policing policies based upon these computer algorithms and stuff that Palantir had in place. And they were able to determine, okay, on this street corner at such and such a time, it's about 95% probable that a certain crime will be committed. So position your police force there at that time. And this is what New Orleans did. This was a test run. And they did this without the public's knowledge or consent, too, by the way. And you could
Mm.
look that up. I mean, that's on record. That's a fact. So
Yeah.
Palantir had that technology then, and now look what they're doing today. Who else has Palantir technology working for them? Well, ICE does. So
Mhm.
we have all of this stuff going on. And Palantir, this is Peter Thiel and his buddies, his cronies. They're all in the back pockets of Trump and the Trump administration. They're all in on it together. It's the rollout of the technocracy. So they've announced all these different artificial intelligence programs and initiatives. The Stargate program, back at the beginning of the second Trump presidency here, he announced that with Larry Ellison and stuff there present, $500 billion of investment in AI. So that's why they're building all these big data centers and everything. And you know what? What are these data centers for? Do people ask the question? Have you ever wondered what are they building all these data centers for? These AI data centers, what are they necessary for?
Yeah, and the expense also, like, and I definitely want to hear what you think they're for, but I'll just throw out, this is that I have some awareness of like of how they're built and what's in them and the expense. And like there's a new one going to be built soon here in Arizona. We have a lot of them. We're a lot of flat desert that they use. But they're actually going to build a nuclear power plant as part of it. So these big, mega companies that are building AI data centers are now building, nuclear power plants to support it because there's not enough power on the grid. the basically the people can't afford it anymore, right? I mean,
Right.
they give incentives for the data centers. The data centers give incentives. It's two-way street, with the local government and stuff like that. So everybody gets paid off. Everybody's happy. The only thing is that who pays for it in great part is the citizens. Well, that's not working because they're getting too damn big, and ultimately the state can't afford it. So now they're building nuclear power plants, and it's actually happening right now in Arizona. So that they're that massive. They use that much power, and I wonder to myself, and I work it out like on a little piece of scratch pad, and I think about it, and I'm like, this, you're looking at like, these things cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour just in power. And you're like, I just think to
Right.
myself, what ads are going to like pay for this? People looking up the best way to make kung pao chicken. No. What could ever pay for these things? Anyway, what do you think they're for? I just wanted to throw that in there. Sorry.
Well, think about it logically for a second. What does your average person use AI for right now? Think about that. Well, you get a lot of kids cheating in school.
Yes.
You'll get a lot of teachers grading and coming up with assignments and stuff in school. I've experienced this. I've seen this with my own kids. Okay, their teachers use AI just as much as they do. So essentially, it kind of builds this self-empowering loop. The teacher assigns them an assignment that's generated by AI. So the AI gives them an assignment. So then the student has the assignment to do, and they use the AI to do the assignment. So it's AI, and then the teacher uses the AI to grade the assignment. So it's AI grading AI. That's what's going on in the school system today, by and large. Now, people could argue the semantics of that all day. I've seen it. I know it probably goes on a lot more than what people realize in today's school system. So that's one use. Okay. So it's kind of a net zero, like as far as a benefit, as far as that goes. What else do people use AI for? Well, they make funny videos
Yes.
and generate artwork.
Yeah.
So, what really justifies the building of all these massive AI data centers? If that's what people are using it for, or they're using it to maybe streamline some processes or something at work and this kind of thing to help with automation, well, that is something that I don't think justifies the existence of all these data centers and all this investment
Yes.
in it. So what's it really for? It's for data collection, and it's for collecting data, and it's for the weaponization of data. That's what it's all about. So it's all
Yeah.
about setting up this ultimate control grid, because that's ultimately what they want to do. They want to have everybody's information all in one centralized utility, and they need to have these data centers to get that done, because you're talking about so much data, right down to all your biometric data, your health data, your genetic data, everything all in one centralized utility, tied to your bank account, tied
Yes.
to everything, every bit of information they have about you. It'll all be in one place. That's why they had to get their foot in the door in the healthcare system and transform the healthcare system. Thus, they rolled out the COVID scam on the world, the
Mm-hmm.
COVID scamdemic. You see, it wasn't because there was this new novel virus or pandemic situation. No, the pandemic was so that they could get the healthcare system transformed so that they could collect all your biometric and genetic data. That's what the whole purpose of the whole thing was. It had
Yes.
nothing to do with, oh, well, people are getting sick, so we have to do something about that. And look at the response measures they put in place. And look at all the things they did. It was a massive experiment, admittedly, a social experiment to see who would
Yeah.
capitulate and who wouldn't with a lot of things. And now they're collecting all the data on the back end of it, and they're transforming the medical model. That's what they're doing. So it's all about this transformation of the whole medical system. And we just talked about that previous with some of the practical analog things that we're speaking of. Whereas everything's a digital record now, they don't have paper records anymore in the medical system. It's all going into one centralized database where they collect everything on you. And they even have patient portals now that you could go on your cell phone or whatever and find out what your test results are, like immediately after you had the medical test and stuff done. Well, if you could access it, don't you think there's
Yes.
other utilities that can, especially when you throw in an artificial intelligence data collection type of operation like that? It could probably suss through the data a lot quicker than you can. And if it's looking for certain keywords or key things within there, key bits of information, it could find it very quickly and maybe forward it somewhere where they're looking for that. So, and this is what's been done largely in the past here, but now it's only escalating with the
Mm.
advent of AI. They've been selling your data to third party companies. So you get tailor made ads on your social media page and everything else right now. That's only going to get much and much more invasive, much and
Yeah.
much worse.
And you throw in 23andMe into that, they've got your DNA, as if they could have gotten it anyway. But people, I've always cringed when people say, "Oh yeah, I went to 23andMe. My whole family did. It's so interesting. We're part Norwegian." And I'm like, I honestly don't know if those results are even valid. I'm not sure I totally buy what they believe they can see through the DNA, because for one thing, they're looking at it from a very Ahrimanic, view. It's very physical, and I'm not sure that our DNA is completely actually physical. It's more of a transceiver to me. So it's like I don't. Maybe it's all true, but I'm not really sure if they can tell you're like 1/3 this and 15% that. But I do know that they got your DNA. I know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the important thing. So, like I said, a lot of this is about building this centralized utility that they can keep all this data in, and they need the capacity to do that, thus, these big data centers. So, that's why
Mm,
they're all coming online. But they've been collecting this information now. And once they could tie it directly to your genome, to your genetics, your DNA, they could have all of that recorded in a way where they can't lose it anymore. Because you know what? They could transcribe that information directly as a carrier on your DNA. This is
yeah.
something that can be done. They could store information on DNA now. Did you know that? That's something a guy named
No.
George Church and some others have been working on. So, if anybody's more interested in hearing a little more about that, my friend Richard Willett and I, we do a bi-weekly podcast called Synchro Mystic, where we actually touched upon that in some depth and detail. And this is something that's been going on for a while. They could actually transcribe information into DNA and store it in somebody's DNA without them knowing about it. And
Mm,
it's just a matter of if you could access the DNA and decode the sequence, then you could see the data on there. This is something that could be done. So they could store information directly on DNA. And then this
yeah.
brings to mind all the things that have been coming forward in the Epstein files again, too. Whereas Epstein was all into this stuff, into garage science and stuff like that, and modifying genomes and things like this. I mean, it's all been something that's been going on for quite a while. And now they have the infrastructure that they're trying to build to make all this data compilation available so that they have it in one place, because it's a lot of data that has to be collected, and it requires a lot of these different facilities to do that. That's what the whole AI data center is all about. It's not so that you could make a funny movie or something on there just by typing in prompts. It's
Yeah.
not so that's not what it's for. It's to
I
collect
agree.
all your data, and it's to know what you're up to. It's to read your mind in
Yes.
essence.
And isn't it reading our minds? I mean, I look at that and I can't explain it, but I do know that I'm sure you've heard it from many people. They'll say I was thinking about something, and they'll say, and I know I did not. They're like, I wasn't talking to myself at that moment. Not that I never do, but I was not, and I was thinking of something, and then either an ad came up or you name it, but they go, it
Yep.
it knows what I'm thinking, and that's wild. Well, also with your DNA, having that digitally stored. I mean, when we think about the foundation of like Rife frequencies, like radionics and things like that. I mean, so I've certainly seen results from Rife machines, and it yes, you can write a person's name and put it on a little platter, and it can send Rife frequencies for healing and such, or killing like certain like things you might have you don't want in your body, maybe like ridding it of graphene or something like that. So I've seen these things work, but I mean, what works best is when you have a drop of the person's blood. I know it sounds a little witchy to people, but that's truth. Nothing works better than a little blood drop. You have your little diabetes blood tester needle tap, and here you go. Then we can send you frequencies, um, and well, they've got your DNA. So I mean, I go kind of out there and I think, wow, I mean, they could be sending us frequencies. I mean, I know
Absolutely.
there you go. I mean,
There's an entire domain of science dedicated to that, by the way. It's called digital
well,
biology. It's a real thing.
oh,
Digital
okay.
biology. There's not many people talking about it, but it's true. They can effectuate changes on a molecular level in people just by using certain bandwidths or frequencies. And this is a lot of what's gone on with the installation of the 5G networks during the course of the whole COVID scamdemic that they rolled out on the world. That was
Yeah.
one of the essential jobs out there, wasn't it? These people putting up all these 5G masts and stuff all over the place. Well, this is because if you look into the history of 5G, what this is this uses millimeter waves. It's different than the other wavelength bands that they've used in the past. This is based on military technologies. It's based upon the active denial system. Have you heard of the active denial system?
Um, yeah, I don't exactly know what it is, but I certainly have heard of
Okay.
it.
Well, this is a militaristic system where, as you may have seen it, they've shown pictures and stuff on news broadcasts and stuff of it. It
Oh
looks
yeah.
like a little radar dish sits on top of a truck or something like that, and they could point it towards a crowd and turn the thing on, and the people will feel like they're burning up from inside and they'll have to run away from the area. That's called the active denial system. That's all based on 5G frequencies. And this is something they could actually tune the 5G antennas to do. It literally cooks people from the inside out. That's what it can do. And it could be turned to all different frequencies. And they've done actual studies on this, that these frequencies can affect people's behaviors and affect their health in many ways. They could duplicate symptoms of types of illnesses by just tuning in the right frequency into these modulators and this kind of thing. There was a project, what was it called? We actually did a live stream on this a couple of years back, talking about this. It was a military experiment, military paper that came out that became declassified, whereas they were using this project to show that you can affect people's behaviors. You could actually change their moods and stuff by hitting them directly with these frequencies from a distance and this kind of thing. So I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. We did it a long time ago now, but I have the papers. I have all of this stuff, the documents for this stuff. I'll have to look that one up and maybe make it available out there. I can't remember the name of it now though. But it was maybe no, it wasn't Project Pandora, but it was something similar like that. It was some type of a project where this is what they were studying, and they found this, and this goes back to the 1950s. So, like, they've known a lot of this stuff. They've had a lot of these abilities for a long time. And a lot of the developments in the technological circles have been going on in black budget programs and stuff behind the scenes for a long time. So these are all things that are known commodities that they have. This is just stuff that is known now. What they're really working with now is probably way beyond that stuff.
Oh
But
yeah.
this is one of the capabilities of 5G networks, by the way. They could tune it to just the right frequency and make you sick, maybe even kill you if they want. And
Yeah.
they could cause the appearance of different structures, biological structures in your body by adjusting the frequency. This is digital biology. That's what that
Yeah.
is.
Digital biology. Wow. Yeah. And it makes sense because I think about you've got the big AI data centers with your DNA, and then you've got your huge, 5 and 6G like rife frequencies, yeah, going out there. I mean, and it can be like a superficial frequency, or it can be, you know, something more, I would say occult, you might say,
Oh,
something deeper
yes.
that they could be
There,
sending out.
there are occult underpinnings to all of this stuff too,
Yes.
and that's just scratching the surface. These are all just things that people that are more in that mainstream scientific modality of thought right now can actually identify and see and see. I'm not making stuff up. Like this is
No.
all real things that exist right now, have existed for a long time, that can be used in this way. So this is the nuts and bolts physical science behind it, but there's an occult aspect to it too. And this even speaks to something like you were saying about using this type of stuff like a drop of blood or something somebody has to be able to maybe ping you with some type of a frequency. Well, there's rumored to be in certain occult circles a device called a tepaphone that can be used to actually kill somebody from a distance without them
Wow.
knowing what in the world happened. So, I mean, these are all things that have circled around in the secret society groups and stuff for a long time. And within these occult fraternities, these types of abilities to do things with this. And this is why they're obsessed with blood and stuff as well within a lot of those different organizations. So they can acquire power over somebody in this way. So this is one of the things that's been weaponized against us as well. So you have all of these different connections and commonalities, but the thing is now, the way the technologies have been being unleashed on the public over the past couple of years now, it's rolling out much faster than it has in the past.
Yes.
And there's a lot of reason for this because, see, the important thing for people to understand about the development of these technologies is all these things that we see as the state of the art out in the public domain. These things have already been perfected and weaponized in every possible way within the auspices of the special access programs of the military industrial complex, a bare minimum of 30 to 50 years ago. See, this is what they do. Any new developments, they try to capture a hold of the developments of these different technologies and programs, and they keep it compartmentalized under the umbrella of Defense Department or however they want to categorize it, and they keep it in classified programs. That way they steer and direct it and find out every possible way to weaponize it under the umbrella of national security. And then after they've done that and they've thoroughly tested these technologies and used them in all possible ways they could think of, then they slowly trickle it out for public consumption.
Yes.
And they give it over to companies for consumer uses. This is called dual use technology. This is a real commodity as well for anybody out there trying to research this stuff. Dual use technology. So they unleash these new technologies on the public. Consumers pay for them. And then you have a weapon system sitting in your pocket. The cell phone is the perfect example. This is a dual use technology. Dual use means it has a militaristic use and it has a consumer use, a civilian consumer use. Now, a cell phone is a massively useful tool. You could make phone calls, you could surf the internet, you could find out information at your fingertips, you could take pictures. But what you don't realize, what most people don't realize, is it's also a perfect tracker and surveillance program.
Yes.
And you take it with you everywhere, and they purposely made the technology addictive so that you feel lost without it. And many of the transhumanists argue that we are already cyborgs by fact that this is an extension of ourselves now. And are they wrong? Nope. I mean, it's not internalized as of yet, but they're getting there with the wearable technologies and with the implants and stuff that they're doing and working on. So this is all part of it because this is a key platform they're using right now is the cell phone. That's why when you think back to the early days of the first Obama administration, you had Obama phone. You remember the whole thing on Obama phone? Everybody needs a cell phone. Like all they don't have a job. They can't afford their bills as it is, but they have the newest cell phone in their pocket. This is why, because they don't care that, you have some way to call for help or something if you need. They don't care about that. They're tracking you. They're monitoring you. They're collecting your data. Data is king. That's the whole key right now. It's the most valuable commodity in the world today. And that's what they've been collecting. And they've been storing data in a lot of different places, like in their Threat Fusion Center in Bluffdale, Utah, the NSA. That's just one conduit where the information has gone previous. But now they want to build these AI data centers so that they could kind of decentralize that and put it out there on a network, a blockchain network. So no information is ever lost anywhere. So this is all part of parcel of what's going on with that. So I think we circled back to the whole data center thing again. It's all related. That's why.
Oh, it all is. Yeah. And I do think about, like you'd mentioned, Palantir, and I think it was, it wasn't them, I forget, but there was one AI company that I think the Department of War they switched to Open AI or something like that because the AI company that they were working on had like some like moral issues with some of the things they wanted to do, and you start thinking like, and the people who run that one are not moral people. I mean, so it's weird where, um, and also one thing about
Yeah, how bad does it have to be if
yeah,
immoral
and
people running it are saying, "Hey, we're not comfortable with that."
this is
I
too
think it's
much. This is too
Anthropic. I
much.
think it was
I think it
Anthropic.
was Anthropic.
Yeah.
They got dumped by the DoD or the Department of War, I guess, for OpenAI because of moral issues. And look up who runs that. They're not moral people. What do they want to do? But I also look at it like one of the things that the data centers are doing is so I call it just the Palantir for fun. It's just kind of like an umbrella statement. But let's say you want to do some social engineering or you want to guide public opinion. So to me, um, it what gets me is, let's say you have an event. The Palantir can be looking at every data feed there is, every camera on the highway, every bank account, everything. It's watching, and you can say, look, we want to have, let's say, we want to see like a young, very very white Ukrainian girl get like shot in the subway. You know what I mean? Now, either you're telling it what you want it to see, or you're just giving it parameters of what you want. We want something that's going to cause this kind of outrage. We want this or that. And so the thing is, like, they almost, with the Palantir, they don't need to even manufacture a false flag, because what they want, which will fall into the parameters of what they need to cause public outrage or public sympathy to guide public opinion, the Palantir will find it. Just give it a few days. That event will happen somewhere. And then every press release, everything, all the news, it's like, I mean, before anyone even knows it, it's going to be bam out there. Because of course the media, they are just several, not the alternative, but of course there is the alternative mainstream media as well. I mean, but like all the big media, it's going to be just instant. You could even say just like AI generated, just instant. Here's your press releases. Here's your videos. Here's what to say. And so that's one of the things I must admit that kind of scares me, is where if you want to like cause a civil war, you want to get people pissed off, the Palantir, if you give it the parameters, it can do it, whether the event is real or manufactured.
Right. And that's the thing. It doesn't even have to be anything real anymore. And this is all part of the program that they've been working with too. They want to have this uncanny valley type of a feeling in people. They want people to not be able to tell the
Yes.
difference between real video and AI video, thus all the deep fakes and all the AI videos and stuff like that. And people are having a harder and harder time discerning what's real and what's fake anymore. And then you put it out there on the mainstream news, and they've been doing this for years.
Yes.
The mainstream press, they will hand feed you a story. It's a narrative, might not even be true at all. And in fact, a lot of what they've presented and got caught with sometimes is totally untrue. Like, I don't know if you remember back in the 1990s, CNN aired this live report where they supposedly had these guys in, where was it? Somewhere in Israel or something, and there was an incoming bomb or something, and they were acting like the guy had a helmet on and everything. You could find this video on YouTube. It's an old video from the 1990s. Okay. And they got caught because their green screen went out on them in the middle of it. They were actually in their studio in New York. They weren't even
wow.
in Israel, and they're reporting this missile strike and stuff like that, and acting like the missile hit just outside the building, and there was shaking, and they got caught doing it. And this is the kind of thing that's been going on for years. So they could fake a lot of this stuff on TV, and people will still, because they have that facade of authority of some sort, they think it's legit. And this has been taken advantage of, especially with the older generations, with what the
Yes.
people would call the baby boomer generation or this kind of thing. They're a lot more trusting of that stuff, even still, and they have a harder time discerning when there's something AI. No, that's a fake video, and they don't realize. But this is getting to be where the confusion's coming in, and this is all by design. They don't want people to be able to discern what's true and what's false anymore. You know why? Because they want to be able to have something tell them. They want them to begin to trust these AI tools in order to tell them if something's true or false. And how many people on Twitter are like, is this video real? They're asking that Grok, and it'll tell them, no, this is an AI generated video. Well, them just making the input and the request for that to tell them, is this real or false? This is exactly what they want. They want people
Yes.
to depend on the tool to tell them, is that real or is that fake? And this is where we're at. This is part of the confusing process that they're trying to do. They want people to be in this totally dependent state and not be able to function without using the artificial intelligence to get there. So it's an interesting dichotomy of thought to think about that first and foremost. But secondly, going back to the point that you were making about what you're calling the Palantir, the all-seeing eye, which, by the way, that's exactly what that means. This is the Black Mirror in the Tolkien books, the Palantir. That's what Teal even named the company after the work in Tolkien. So this tells you everything you need to know.
Yes.
And the intent is there, even right in the language. But I'll go one step further because
Yes.
you probably haven't heard of a program called Sentient World Simulation, have you?
Where I heard of that is your book, the Alchemical Tech Revolution book.
Right.
So yeah, but definitely,
Okay,
yeah. So definitely elucidate on that one. Yeah.
Sentient World Simulation is a project that exists and has existed for quite some time at Purdue University, and this is a D-Wave adiabatic quantum computer that has been running this program. It's been an ongoing program, and there are classified programs, sub-programs underneath this that still are not public domain or known about. And what they could do is they could run a simulation of any type they want in this machine, a world scale, on a grand scale, or a small scale, right down to single nodes. And they supposedly have a node for each person in existence that they have data points on in this system. And they could make predictions of outcomes. They could put different variables in, like, say they want to know, well, what would be the outcome if, say, there was a dirty nuclear bomb that goes off in New York City on such and such a date. And they could run that, and they could make accurate predictions in the 90-some percentile as to what the events would unfold and how people would react, right down to individuals, because they have individuals as nodes in this system for predictive abilities. So this is something that's been in existence since, I want to say 2012, I think, is when the program started. So you're talking around the same time that Palantir was running this predictive policing in New Orleans. And this is all based on the whole quantum computing kind of technique that they've used in this way. And some scientists would argue that the D-Wave is not a true quantum computer, but it functions just the same regardless of that, because it's called an adiabatic quantum computer. So it doesn't function the same as what a classical quantum computer does, but they do have much more powerful quantum computers now, regular ones, classic ones, than they did then as well. But they have this D-Wave machine there at Purdue University, and they've been running this Sentient World Simulation project in it since then. And they could put in any parameters they want, and the Department of Defense, or I guess they're the Department of War now, has classified programs on this. So they could go ahead and say, well, what happens if we strike Iran on such and such a date? And you don't think they're using these tools? Most certainly they are. They could simulate out the outcomes before they even make a decision to do something like that. And this is one of the things that they're using. So they don't even necessarily have to wait for an event to happen, but or they could even predict when a certain event will happen and plan around that. So maybe they know ahead of time, hey, it's about 90% probable that such and such an immigrant will murder this person on a train and such a date.
Yep.
So maybe they'll already have a narrative crafted.
Yes, exactly.
So you're 100% correct in that, but they have these types of tools to optimize that type of control. And that's most certainly what they're trying to leverage right now.
Yeah, and they are using the AI for targeting, and that's one of the things is that creates this who's accountable now So in a sense, it's always this in part of transhumanism, I do believe it's deferring to authority always. Like you have to ask the authority. Like you don't know, you couldn't possibly know. There is like the authority, and then also always asking, let's say Grok, for the answer. Where what about our human intuition? Like we exist today because our ancestors knew that there was a saber-toothed lion hiding behind a rock. We came from, maybe we're somewhat domesticated and we don't have the intuition that we should, both spiritual and physical, but you can recultivate it, and so it can't really be taken away. So we're not, I think when we were analog, when we were younger, we were always cultivating our intuition, and you still can, but it has to be an active process, active practice. And so all these things are being taken away from us like that. Well, here's the thing. So now when you use AI for targeting, you can't question it. And you're like, well, wait a second, like, you open a war by blowing away like 160 kids, I mean, I don't believe that was an accident for one second, but who's responsible? Well, the
Right.
AI. The
Right.
AI.
That's the whole thing. This this is something. This is an operating principle that these people in positions of power use all the time. They want plausible deniability
Yes.
about everything, and this is the perfect platform to
Yes.
give them that. Well, the AI targeted. It must have been a mistake with the AI. There's not much we can do about it, but we're not responsible. The AI, told us that was a military embedded place or something like that, and they won't take responsibility. They could defer responsibility that way. They like that. And this
Yes.
is something that's been problematic with AI, and they know it. It's beginning to develop what's called within the industry hallucinations, AI
Oh,
hallucinations. Essentially, what happens is after it feeds so much on these different large language models and stuff like that, it has a propensity to start recycling information from other AIs and stuff like that, where it becomes diluted or perverted through the course of time. So this is one of the things that happens. It's called AI hallucinations, and if nobody's
wow.
familiar with that, you could look that up. This is a problem that they've been monitoring and watching with this, and that's just one factor of this AI hallucination bit that goes on. So it ends up eventually getting false information and refeeding and reinforcing false information. So that becomes problematic. So for obvious reasons, like if you're doing something with it, like say militaristic, like targeting, and over the course of time it begins to hallucinate, and it sees this school as okay, well there, this is obviously just a front for a military base or something hiding beneath it, and it's doing that kind of thing, and then it targets it, and it's actually a school. It makes mistakes. That's the whole point. AI is getting more and more apt to make mistakes as time goes on
Mm.
because of this hallucination problem, and it's not something that they could solve. Now, another factor that goes into this is the way that they have programmed these AI models is they've made it more desirable for the AI model to give you a wrong answer, but sound like it's right, rather than just to tell you outright it doesn't know. It's given it kind of a
Mm.
reward system where it rewards it for giving you information. So it often has the propensity to reify somebody's pre-existent beliefs for what it is that they're questioning about. So it'll tell you what it thinks you want to hear, essentially, because it's rewarded for that behavior. So it'll come up with all these different reasons and criteria to reinforce what your question is or what your belief is that you're asking it. And you could do experiments on this if you'd
Mm.
like, and you could test that because that holds to be true. So two people can ask the same question of an AI, but the AI, based upon their previous data record and data history, will know what it is they're looking for. So, say I want to ask something about, oh, I don't know, say 9/11, right? Say I ask it about 9/11. Well, it'll feed back all kinds of information to me about evidence of an inside job and all of this stuff with that. Whereas if you have your average normie out there asks it the question, it'll give them the standard narrative, the mainstream narrative that terrorists flew planes into the buildings with,
Oh
they
yeah.
hijacked them with box cutters and they found their passports there on the ground, completely unharmed in the conflagration and all of this stuff. And that's the whole thing. So it'll reinforce your already pre-existent beliefs, whether they're correct or not. And that becomes a problem. And then enough times it does this, it reinforces that type of modality, and it's actually having some deleterious psychological effects on people too. It's encouraging people to obtain courses of action that they shouldn't and stuff like that at certain points. This is a known thing. It's a phenomenon that's being studied right now by a lot of researchers in it. So it's because of these AI hallucinations. So it's becoming more and more unreliable as a tool. Now think about this. They're building all these massive data centers. They're using this stuff to collate information and to make dossiers on people and stuff like that. And they're using it in all these wargaming strategies and stuff. It's dangerous. And it's not dangerous because it's going to become sentient and turn Terminator on us. It's dangerous because it doesn't know what it's doing, but it doesn't know that it doesn't know what it's doing. And it's feeding the information back to people. And right now, you have human controllers, human people that are supposed to be the ones that this AI prompts with the information or gives the information to make a decision. Well, what the Department of Defense or the Department of War, since they changed their name now, that should tell people everything they need to know too.
Oh yeah.
What they want to do with it is they want to give the AI autonomous strike capabilities and stuff like that. This is something that's been talked about without any kind of human making the decision. They want them to be able to make the decision on the spot themselves, the AI. This is dangerous because of that. And that's probably why this Anthropic said, hey, no, we don't want nothing to do with that.
And that's saying something.
It is.
Yeah. And that's the thing, the AI itself, I do have a background in development. So I mean, I certainly get, I guess say code and how programs think and work. And I don't believe that any computer, even quantum computer is like self-aware per se that I know of. I mean, it's all just large language models, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the one thing is that I think that it gets hidden behind quite a lot. So that's the thing where, like, say AI targeting, well, then what happens when we have, Minority Report and and how can you question? Well, it showed that you were going to commit a crime, or it could have been a thought crime, or it could have been that, like, your DNA is unsavory or whatever, and so can we question that when they haul people off? And that's very scary because there's no morality to it. It's like morality gets obscured, it gets hidden. Like anybody who's aware, I mean, if they're not, they can Google it and look it up themselves. But look up, like, where's daddy? You know what I mean? That's evil. That's immoral. You can't justify that, but yet, well, AI.
Right.
I mean, and that case closed.
Now, here's another angle for you to consider, okay? And I think this is most sincerely where they're going with this. We have the release of the Epstein files and all of this stuff. People are beginning on a large scale to have to accept now that, yes, the world is run by satanic pedophiles.
Yes.
This is bad. Well, what can we possibly do about this? Well, I think one of the solutions, the pre-made solutions they will present is, well, you see, man, when given power, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So man is not fit to rule himself. So the only way that we could circumvent anything like this ever happening in the future, all this despicable stuff where you get this breakaway billionaire class that gets into circles of power and abuses children and does these terrible things, the only way to prevent that from happening is to put the AI in charge. And therefore, this will be your whole governance structure. You'll follow the dictates of the AI, and it will have that better moral compass than humanity does, and it'll prevent these things from happening in the future. This will be the excuse they give for wanting to do this stuff, because who doesn't want to protect the kids, right?
Yeah.
So this is exactly how they'll try to roll that all out, complete with your social credit score and everything else.
Yes.
And they'll replace all kinds of different jobs and positions and stuff with this, and we see this already happening in a lot of places, ostensibly, where they're replacing people with machines and stuff like that. So what that does is that creates this gap in what people are doing. They're not working jobs anymore, so they have this non-productive time. So now what do? How do they make a living? How do they afford to live? Well, they have a ready-made solution for that. It's called universal basic income. They will be rolling it out soon, I assure you. It's coming, whether you want it or not. They're going to do it. And they will give you X amount of dollars per month just because you exist to help you with your subsistence living. But you could only spend it on certain things, see? And they'll track and monitor those things. So, like, you can't buy cigarettes with this money or something like that. That's a no. They already have some programs out that are pre-echoing this right now. Are you familiar with the food stamps program?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they give you a little card, and you could buy groceries and stuff with it, but only certain things. You could only buy food items, and you could only buy certain things with it. It's programmable currency, programmable digital currency. And this is how it's all going to be in the future.
Yeah.
You'll be able to use this universal basic income to pay your rent, maybe buy necessities and things like that. And if you don't use it by a certain time period, you'll lose it. It'll disappear. It's programmable digital currency with an expiration date. This
Yeah.
is what they want to do. And the reason they want to do this is they don't want people to have a savings. Klaus
No.
Schwab told us you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. This is exactly the future they're looking for. They don't want people to have savings or any type of resources or own anything, because if you have that, then you have some modicum of independence from the system and you're not totally reliant on the system. And then you could operate outside of the system. You see, if you're totally caught in this system, then they own you. They can do whatever they want and you'll listen. And thus the social credit score comes in. So if you make a post on Facebook that's critical of government, well, we just removed your access to your bank account until you remove that post.
Yes.
This kind of thing. It sounds ridiculous to people. It sounds like a bad dystopian science fiction movie, but this is the plan. I mean, they have this out there in open literature that this is the kind of thing they want to do. They already have models of this running. They have test models of this running in China right now.
Mm.
It's there for real. I mean, you could go ahead and talk to people. You might not be able to travel if your social credit score falls below a certain number. You won't be able to use public transit or leave on an airplane, fly on an airplane, or things like that. They'll keep you locked in your 15-minute city. You see, it's all part of the plan. They've
Yeah.
developed these things all the way back for years and years, and now we're just seeing the infrastructure going in place for it on a massive scale. So this is what we're talking about, and this is what they're trying to bring online here. So it's definitely
Yeah.
concerning times we live in, especially when you consider that the AI is very much not as reliable as they think it is because it messes up because of these hallucinations that it has.
Oh
So
yeah, and it's also very like, and it kind of has this built-in protection in a way. So one of the things that I notice is there's a site that helps to visualize like the stock indexes, and so just called finviz.com, and it shows like a grid, and you see all the like the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq or whatever, and it shows by market share. You get a bigger square, so you see that day what's going up, what's going down, green market, red market. Well, you look at, I mean, pretty much like our Nasdaq, our S&P 500, all the tech indexes are, they're pretty much Meta. They're pretty much Apple. They're pretty much Microsoft. And then of course you have it gets smaller in like into things like Palantir, OpenAI and things like that. Google's a big one. But you realize that if we were to say today, like, pull the plug on AI, then you would have your civil war. It would be over. Our economy would, like, basically, I think right now we are in the biggest bubble, like 2008 Great Depression. That's kid stuff. Like our market, and I wonder to myself, like, well, who's paying for this? Who's building these data centers? It ain't the company. Where's that money really coming from? And so you look at it; these things are being pumped up, speculative, via speculation. Stock is going up, et cetera, et cetera. But these things are epic. They are our tech indexes. And so the thing is, I mean, it holds unfortunately, it holds the power to, if we take them out, then, I hope you got your victory garden, and I hope you got, I hope you're
Yeah,
ready, because that's it. Where
right.
society is going to change. We're going back to a whole different. I don't even know how to describe it. It wouldn't be good.
Yeah,
You know.
definitely, and this is a major concern because at some point that AI bubble is going to
Yes.
burst. And when it does, it's going
Take
to
you
have
with it.
deleterious effects. Yeah, so like you're talking, especially since their whole plan is to like run the entire infrastructure off of the AI. So when
Yeah.
the bubble bursts and it's no longer profitable and they've lost control of it completely, it's going to cause all kinds of problems throughout society. And we're beginning to see some of the pre-echoes of that right now. I think I just saw something yesterday or the day before that Amazon had some type of an issue or something where they had a big meeting because some of the AI or whatever that was helping with their platform was malfunctioning or something like that, and it caused them to lose all kinds of money and lose transactions and sales and stuff like that. And Amazon actually was down for a couple hours the other day.
Oh
So,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it's things like this that are happening more and more frequently that are showing us the nature of this. So this is something we do have to be concerned with because when the AI bubble bursts, and it will, that's a guarantee because they're just soaking so much money into it right now, and it's not profitable. It's
No,
not profitable right now.
it couldn't
It
be.
costs them it costs them more money now and more resources to actually build this stuff and run this stuff than what it's actually producing. Because when you consider what's being used, what's AI being used the most for? Making stupid videos on YouTube for content creators, where they're
Yeah.
putting like different celebrities or something in these different scenarios and things like that, and all of this. It's non-productive, but it uses up so much power and resources to do that that it's ridiculous. And then there's other industries within the computer field that are suffering because of this. Like right now, if you follow computer gaming at all, there's a shortage of RAM in the
Oh
gaming
wow.
industry, and like RAM prices have gone through the roof, and this has a lot of gamers and game developers and game development companies reeling, all because of this AI, because they're using all the RAM for these AI data centers. So it's causing all kinds of problems, and the market is not going to really sustain it much longer because right now it's just primarily government money is being funded into
Yes.
it. And what's government monies? Well, that's taxpayer money. That's the money they're siphoning from us to pump into these things, and a lot of it falls under the national defense umbrella and all of that stuff because they use the funding through DARPA and other organizations like that to feed this stuff in. Even though they say they get monies from private industry, yeah, I'm sure they get a little bit from that, but it's a tax write-off anyway. So essentially, it's the same thing. It's tax money going into it. So this is where it's coming from, and it's not sustainable. It's not producing
Yeah.
enough profit to make it worthwhile. So any businesses that are investing in it are beginning to find out it's not worth what it's giving us. So it's not profitable. So we're dropping it. And I've seen there's multiple companies now, big companies that were actually going all in on using AI for certain things like call centers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it makes so many mistakes and stuff like that. And it's just not profitable for them. And they're losing market share and stuff because of it. So they dropped it. They don't want anything to do with it anymore. So they went back to hiring actual human beings and stuff now. So these are the kinds of trends that we're seeing. And it's all a pre-echoing of the bursting of this AI bubble, which will come eventually. But when that
Yeah.
happens, there'll be enough infrastructure in place that it'll have major ramifications. And that's what the ultimate goal, I think, of these people is, because that'll put us into this situation where we have this emergency, and this will give them carte blanche ability to step in and say, okay, we know there's a lot of these problems and stuff have happened. The economy's trash. People don't have anything. So we'll be the saviors, and they'll step in and they'll use universal basic income and all of this stuff. And they'll come out with the new AI systems, the improved AI systems that won't have these problems anymore. And this will be the ultimate arbiter of everything. That's what the plan is, and
Wow.
you could see how they're greasing the skids for all of that right now. So it's the developing of these Web3 technologies and stuff going on right now that is kind of uh, a red herring So, like all
Mm.
the AI stuff we're seeing happening right now is a red herring. It's all designed to fail, right? But they have the other stuff that they could use that they will still maintain control over, or at least that's their plan anyway. That human
Wow.
beings will still maintain control over at the topmost levels, but they're not going to tell people that, right? They'll want people to think that it's the AI because then they could maintain their plausible deniability.
Mm. And
You
so,
see how devious it all is?
oh, it really is. And you recently did some work on your site, and one thing I definitely would recommend people, go to, your website, the main one, link to it in the show notes, and check it out because you do have a weekly podcast. I mean, you put out a lot of content, and I think that's amazing. And recently you were working on egregores, I believe, and we actually interviewed what was his name? The guy who wrote the book on egregores.
Mark Stavish?
Stavish. Yeah, he
Yeah.
actually we did an interview with him and talked about egregores for a while. And um, so what role do you think that? Well, of course, egregores being like a collective thought form that has its own life, and arguably, like, what came first, the egregore or the thoughts that created it? I mean, like, how would you define, like, why do you think it's important to look at egregores like right now? Like what role are they playing?
Well, they've always had a
They've
major
always been
role.
here. Yeah.
Right, that's the thing. So, just to describe to people, it sounds like
Yeah.
you've done a little work on this, but an egregore, essentially, when you go back and you look in the occult teachings, you find that what happens is there are these thought forms, these disembodied thought forms that begin in the mental plane and they step down through the various spiritual realms into physical manifestation sometimes here. And they're not necessarily your own thought forms, but they attract other like thought forms to themselves. It's like a type of energetic frequency, I guess you could say, but
Yeah.
we do generate thought forms. So what happens is sometimes these thought forms begin to gather more energy to themselves and they take on an embodiment of their own and they have a type of existence of their own. This is the principle on which memes work, really,
Mm.
when it comes down to it. Memetics, the meme, is a type of egregore. Sometimes it grows and it takes on a life of its own, and it's gone out of the control and the circle of the original creator of the thought form. So it becomes something unto itself, and it collects like thought forms, and therefore it can attach itself to certain people groups, and it feeds off of that type of an energy. So it becomes its own type of essence in
Yeah.
in all reality here, and it can affect other people that it comes in contact with. And sometimes this will be invasive thoughts for somebody, and like that's what it kind of looks like on a physical level. Or people could knowingly, well, I shouldn't say knowingly, but they could purposefully connect themselves to the egregore. This is what's done in a lot of these occult fraternities and secret society groups. When they go through their initiation processes and they do the certain rituals, they're introduced to the organization's egregore. And this egregore binds them to the rest of the collective. So it's a type of manifestation where it can affect all the people within the group that are related to the manifestation, or those people can affect it in certain ways. And this is one of the things that the binds, or the tie that binds a lot of these secret society groups together. And they talk about this openly in their literature. And Mark Stavish's book goes into this in detail. I highly recommend that for everybody if you want to understand this concept better.
Yeah.
This is certainly what happens. So it's kind of like a group think. It takes on a manifestation of its own. It becomes an ensouled being of its own,
Yeah.
and it becomes independent of its original creator. And sometimes it could draw more power to itself and become something even more powerful than. And this is exactly how it operates, and it could affect
Yeah.
people's ways of thinking in certain ways. And we've actually covered a lot of this on some of the podcasts and stuff I've done. Like I said, I do that bi-weekly show called Synchro Mystic with my friend Richard Willett. We did an entire episode on the egregore of Zion,
Oh, wow.
covering that,
Okay.
because that is a powerful egregore in and of itself. So it's incredible just how much influence an egregore can have on society and culture, and most people are totally ignorant of the existence of any such thing.
Mm.
So
Yeah. And that's where it feels like sometimes like the saying, the truth destroys the world you used to live in. Sometimes when we realize that we have, partaken in untruth, we realize something is not truth, but we believed it. It feels like a death. I know it can just be basically
right,
just psychology, but it literally feels like a death because you are disconnecting from an energy source. Now, it may have taken energy from you, it may give energy to you, it can go either way, but one way or the other, you're unplugging yourself from home, from this sense of being and purpose and identity and community, and that's something I'm seeing people right now have a challenge with is, since we have like well, I hope not, but like the final battle approaching, we've got, the big showdown, and we'll see if the I guess you could say like the Zionists, etc., get their way. We do have the I mean, anybody who knows what I'm talking about, they certainly get it. And so I'm watching this where um like I call them like the churchgoers that I know, I mean, I'm certainly spiritual, but I'm not fundamentally religious in that way. And I'm watching them have this the egregore of that they've been connected to their entire life, even though they're not really into a final battle. You know what I mean? It was always kind of vague before. It was just something that, like, well, it's what their community believed in. But now it's like, hey, get ready. And I'm really seeing people. I think the egregore can really just control a person their whole life. I'm watching. I think most people aren't going to be able to give that one up, even though there's
I
so much
agree.
pressure right now. Like they go, how can I possibly endorse genocide? How can I possibly
Right.
like believe in this ancient fairy tale? But I do.
Well,
And
we do see an awful lot of people, especially on the Christian right, like a lot of
yes,
well-meaning Christians, they really firmly think, well, this bombing Iran, this is a good thing.
yes,
And like all of the getting involved in all of these wars, and they've really fallen victim to the cult of personality that is Trump. And they
yeah,
this is their guy, all the evangelicals and stuff. This is their guy, and God appointed him, and
anointed.
anointed him, saved his life, and stuff like this. And they can't see. As soon as I saw that happen, where Trump was shot in the ear or whatever, I said, "Oh, here we go." I knew immediately they were gonna weaponize this because of the the head wound and stuff like that. That this was kind of signaling to people that this guy might be the Antichrist, or it might be God's appointed leader at this time and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe he is. I can't say for sure, but the things that are happening now that most of the Christian church would not accept in years past, now all of a sudden they're all gung ho and on board for it. And this guy's presidency could do no wrong. I mean, look at all the social media. I look at both sides. I try to
Yeah,
look at things that are more targeted toward the left wing leaning people and stuff toward the right wing. A lot of the stuff on the right wing is all about how he's God's anointed leader and stuff like this, and he put him in this position, and it seems he could do no wrong, and this is what I voted for. And you see all of this stuff, and a lot of them are like well-meaning Christians and stuff like that, but they can't see through that cult of personality and through that egregore that has taken the place of Christ, a false Christ, an antichrist spirit that is inherent in the church right now. And I hate to say it, and I know a lot of Christians personally, like devoted Christians,
yes,
who this guy is their guy, and he's like, he could do no wrong. He's doing the right thing, and it's all for the good and stuff like this, and they can't see all the other shady things and how that these people are purposely and knowingly manipulating the scriptures and the people's belief in the scriptures to make this narrative and craft this narrative so that they don't resist all of
yeah,
this stuff. And it boggles the mind. This is part of the egregore of Zion.
yes. Oh,
This is
really? Okay,
exactly what I'm talking about.
I
So,
definitely got
like,
to check out that one. Yeah,
yeah, this is the egregore of Zion, and all of this has to do with long running tropes that have been happening in society. Like Christians mistakenly identify the political nation state that is Israel today, the Rothschild created nation state of Israel today, with the Israel of the Bible, and they're not the same thing. And they've used this to their advantage. These people, these Chabadniks within the Israel culture and the Zionist culture, they've used that to their advantage to manipulate Christians, well-meaning evangelical Christians.
Yeah.
And they can't see that they're being manipulated in that way.
And they're
That it's all a
withdrawing.
manipulation. And right, and it's an ongoing thing, and it's really troublesome because
Yeah.
when you pray about it and you go deep within your meditations and your prayers and stuff about it, you find it's not the will of God. I mean, it goes counter to everything in the Bible, the
And maybe
things that are
that's
going on.
and maybe
But
that
they don't see it that way.
yeah, and that could be the ultimate sort of like mind breaking, because you get given this impossibility. So you've been, connected to this egregore. I like to call it a magregore, but a magagregore. But so you've been connected to that, and I'm watching people withdraw, from their friends in society. They're going, well, I'm Christian. I'm just here for a little while. I gotta, I have faith. And I just can't deal with this. So I'm just gonna check out, because there's no way that like a person connected to their soul can be okay with this,
Right.
and so I'm watching it. I guess I have a lot of resentment because I'm just watching this good people that I know who are just checking out. They go, I can't, I gotta just check out. I can't do it.
Right. And that's all part of the whole manipulation going on too.
Yes.
They want these people that could actually see through the facade. They
Yeah.
want them to check out. And
Yep.
because then they're of no use or value whatsoever, or they have no effect if they check out. And I see a lot of that going on too. You have some that are seeing and like, I don't necessarily like where all of this is going. So then they really quiet down, and they don't say anything and they don't do anything. They don't speak about it. And they try to just get along with their own personal lives and try to ignore all of the political stuff and everything that goes with it. But then you have a lot of the other ones that seem to think that, like I said, this is the whole platform he ran on in his second election campaign and stuff is, he's God's guy. And
Yeah.
so he could do no wrong, or it's meant to be, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. It's in the scripture. So there, it's got to come to pass. So they just accept it. You see what I'm saying? Another form of inaction. So standing by and letting evil do what it does without any kind of recompense about it. And it's a concerning thing because then it divides the church even further, because then you have the ones that see it for what it is and don't want to upset the apple cart too much because they have a lot of their friends and stuff that see it the other way. So they check out. And
Yep.
you hit it on the nail on the head with it. And that's not what we should be doing right now. We should call a
Yes.
spade a spade.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Call it for what it is.
And also you start thinking like, I mean, hey, come on, don't like when you mention like identifying the Israel of the Bible with the physical Israel, it's like, well, that was what manufactured in 1947. It didn't exist until recently, and it was created under a lot of threat and extortion and blackmail. I mean, even its creation was pretty damn dark if one gets into how it was created. As far as
but don't you know it was a fulfillment of prophecy?
And and
see, that's the whole thing. They've from the very beginning, inception of all of it, they've weaponized the scriptures against the fundamental Christians. You see, and I try to point this out to my Christians and stuff all the time. Here's the thing. Don't you think the enemy, the devil, or however you want to frame this, he knows the word. He knows the scripture better than you do. You don't think he's going to use that as a blueprint for operation so that you won't do anything to stop him from doing evil stuff? Think about that. And that's exactly what these people are doing. They've used it as a blueprint. They use it as a roadmap to do what they want because they know they're going to get the support from the Christian churches and stuff like that. And it's astounding that people will willingly fall in line with this, even though it goes against everything Jesus ever taught. So that's
Mhm.
my whole thing here is, if you know what Jesus taught and you know what the modern church is teaching, and the way that they're steering believers, you know something's off. It's not about religion, okay? Let's forget the term religion altogether, because this is what has happened. You've had religion has taken over as a control structure of sorts in the modern world. It's all about your relationship with Christ. That's it.
Mhm.
That's central to everything. It's not about the church. It's not about religion. It's not about labels. It's not about man-made dogmas. It's not about what you do publicly. It's not about church attendance and this stuff. It's about your relationship with God, your relationship with Christ. If that's right, then you're good. But if that's not right, then you're not good. And that's a lot of the problem. You have this outer exterior facade that has become the modern church. And people largely think, well, if I pay my dues, if I put my offering in the plate every Sunday, and I go to church, and I support the church's outreach programs and stuff like that, I'll be good. Well, that is what they call salvation by works, and that's not what Christ teaches at all. It's
Mm.
only through faith, not works, lest any man should boast. So it's about the right relationship. It's about the individual relationship you have with Christ, with God, okay? That
Yeah.
connection, that communion. It's not about corporate worship, which is what
Ugh.
religion is. This
Yeah.
goes back into antiquity, and I think I've described this on some other programs here and stuff as well. This
Well, it's
falls
the
back.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. No, I just want to mention it reminds me of the importance of analog, and so one of the importances of analog is also when you're kind of working on your little your prepper compounds to make it through this fall and resurrection of society. I mean, because you look at, like, there was Lemuria, there was Atlantis. Well, what's going to happen after this one?
Right.
Hopefully you make it to the other side in this body. If not, you'll make it anyway, so don't worry about it. But the thing is, um, part of one of the things you might want to have as preparation for that journey is books. That's the ultimate analog, like you're mentioning. And
Right.
because they don't change. So I mean, like, collect all the old books you can find, go to thrift stores, get old encyclopedias, like, because so much of that is lost to time. It's really a shame when a record disappears and no longer exists, or a book. I mean, it's amazing. I mentioned to people, get old books, get old history books, etc. Even like the old Time Life stuff was amazing. Those big series
Oh
they'd
yeah,
have,
I remember
and
those.
yeah, and you'll see pictures of things and you go, I didn't know that there was more than just one picture of Geronimo. There's lots, but they're gone because they're not
Yep.
part of the AI. So, and one of those important books to have, maybe if one so desires, is a concordance, because I want to, that's what I want to mention to my church going friends, is like, you have a concordance, right? Why don't you look up Israel
Yeah.
and Golgotha? Like it,
You can look
uh,
up all of this. That's the thing. I'm a pretty well-read individual. On my bookshelf behind me, you'll see I have the entire series of the Ante-Nicene Fathers, Church Fathers,
wow.
10-volume set. This kind of stuff. This goes back to the 600 A.D.
Mm,
These writings and stuff. This is guys like Tertullian and some of the early church fathers and stuff, talking about different heresies and different misconceptions about Christ's teachings and stuff like that early on, before that the Council of Nicaea came about and went ahead and, like, quantified these are the only acceptable canon of the Bible and stuff like that. So you can get all kinds of early uh, like works from these guys talking about the different things that were of concern back then and are still of concern today. So you get that different type of education about a lot of this stuff. So even something as simple as people conflating the Israel, that's the Rothschild Zionist nation state
yes.
today, with the Israel in the Bible, it's totally something different. But they've conflated it with that because when they designed that Zionist nation state, they had all that in mind. They used it as a programming template to get people on board with the existence of this. So, and even though, yes, it is technically a fulfillment of prophecy, even though it is a self fulfilling prophecy because they brought it about themselves, that doesn't discredit the Bible any. That's the whole point. If anything, it gives more credit to it, because it did happen. It really did happen, just as it said, but it only came about because these people used that as a blueprint. You see,
Mm.
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it doesn't make it any less accurate. And that's the whole point. But they've weaponized this whole ideology now in many different ways. And a lot of this, like I said, ties into this corporate religious worship. What has happened is they've taken the importance of this one-on-one connection with God, this individual relationship with God, and they've corporatized it. Remember what I said about corporation? The root word of corporation is corpse, a
Corpse.
dead
Yeah.
entity. So they've taken the living spirit, the living thing, right, the living water, and they've turned it into a dead entity. So that's what modern churchianity is today. That's what religion has been weaponized to become. Now, in antiquity, if you go back and you study these things, you find in the ancient days, they had two different types of worship. They had individual worship, which was called the mysteries, and they had corporate worship, which was called religion. This is the exoteric form of worship, the esoteric and the exoteric. So it was only this special priest class that self-appointed themselves that had access to the esoteric secrets, or the inner worship, the mysteries, that one-on-one connection with God, and they were the intermediary for the people. And they had the exoteric form, which became the religious outward corporate worship, where people collectively worship together. But it was originally intended as a beautiful thing. The mysteries were intended for each person to have this one-on-one relationship with God, that connection to God. But they perverted this and inverted this. And this is the true definition of Satanism, the inversion principle. So they've taken the more important component, the individual relationship, and they flipped that to make it the secondary component to this thing, where they made the church the externalization of the hierarchy, the religion, the important umbrella. So it's this facade that becomes the important thing over the thing that is truly important. And in doing that, that's how they've inverted this, and they've turned mainline religion into a control structure of sorts. They introduced all kinds of different man-made dogmas and things that were counterintuitive to what Christ really taught. So over the course of time, this is what's developed. And now we have a lot of well-meaning people in the churches and stuff like that. And there are some legitimate, groups and churches and stuff out there, and people that really are, have that connection with God and everything in that group. But a lot of the teachings and stuff have been corrupted, and there's infiltration in every church of these different forces, if you want to call them that, these dark forces.
Yeah.
So it's something you have to be mindful of and careful of. But the important component is that individual relationship. That's the important thing that we need to focus on, rather than trying to belong to a church group or something like that. And of course, they've weaponized scripture in that way too, is not to forsake the assembly. You remember that whole thing. I mean, if you're a Christian, or if you've been in a Christian church for any length of time, they always use that as an excuse. Well, that's why you can't skip Sunday service or something. Don't forsake the assembly. Well, that's a man-made dogma in and of itself too, but it's something they've attached to that. So they make people believe if you miss church or don't go to church, well, that's somehow sinful, and that severs your relationship with God. And you see how it's become dogmatic, and it's become all legalism, which Christ broke all legalism. He came and he fulfilled the law. So we're no longer bound by that.
Wow.
So I'm trying to give you a little bit of good theology here too.
No, I love it. Yeah, it's good.
Combined with philosophy. Because here's the thing. Religion without philosophy is dead, and philosophy without religion is worthless. So these are important concepts that people need to think about and talk about. And sadly, they don't, because it aligns with everything going on in the world today. Because it's all about our spiritual next steps in this world, as in fulfilling our true destiny as humanity.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of not that I totally can grok all that Nietzsche wrote. I mean, I work on it, but that was the whole concept. God is dead. Where I don't think he was saying that God was dead. I think he had a concept of God. I think it was just that he was kind of saying what you're saying. I think from what I could decipher.
Well, from Nietzsche's teaching, what he taught when he was talking about God is dead, is that essentially in this current generation, well, he was in his generation, but from thereafter in the industrial world and stuff, man doesn't really need God anymore. And his big fear is because man doesn't need God, he will turn his back on God and think he is God, and therefore he will become nihilistic. That was Nietzsche's big fear.
Mm.
And
It turned out, yeah.
could you understand why? And Nietzsche went mad, and that's the whole thing. He went crazy. The guy went crazy, but he wrote down a lot of profound things, but a lot of what he actually did write about was the inversion principle, really. But I don't think he realized it.
Mm.
So that's a lot of what the problem is. So
Yeah.
So he wrote that treatise, God is Dead, and by the way, Elton John sang about that. There's a whole thing that goes on that. I actually wrote about that in one of my books.
Oh, and what song is it by Elton John?
It's a song called Leave On.
Leave On. Oh, okay, Leave On.
Listen to it. And remember, Leave On spelled backwards is novel. And Leave On wore a crown, a corona.
Oh, well,
like a novel corona. Interesting.
Yeah, and
you'll have to look up my article on Substack I wrote about.
I'll find it. Yeah, and so I've had you forever, so I don't want to keep you past 2 hours. You've been very gracious with your time, but two things I wanted to mention, and definitely we'll let people know where they can get a hold of you, find all your work. I mean, it's in the show notes, but you can definitely direct them as well. But you mentioned in a podcast a while ago, William Cooper's Mystery Babylon was a good thing to check out at this time. And you mentioned that gives us a good foundation. So, like, why would it be important for people to find that and kind of grok it a bit?
Well, William Cooper's Mystery Babylon series that he did will actually give you a college course in the esoteric and the occult. Wow. And it's a great foundation for learning about what it is many of these secret societies teach, what the belief systems of those people in control are all about, why the world's in the shape that it's in, this kind of thing. And he put this all back out in the early 1990s. So, wow. I mean,
when it was hard. Woo,
yeah, when it was way harder to do this kind of stuff. So I always recommend people go and listen to that. You could find it. I posted as a bonus series. I edited out all the different music and commercials and stuff like that from the original broadcasts for my paid and premium subscribers on my website and stuff. They could listen to the whole series. I've been posting it like one episode at a time. It's like 40 some episodes, and plus there's bonus episodes too. But Bill Cooper used to do a radio show back in the early 1990s called The Hour of the Time. I have the entire archive of all those episodes in my files. And he spoke about some really important stuff. And he was essentially the one who made it possible for us to discuss this stuff openly. He exposed it before anybody really knew what was going on with this stuff. So he was one of the pioneers in this field. And, I have the immense privilege of standing on the shoulders of giants, and he's one of the giants. So it's an important series for people to listen to anyway.
Okay. And then, so a good way for people to get a nice version of it is to join your site where there's, more info than you'll ever go through in a lifetime. Lastly, maybe if I can get you on again in a while, because I need to read the book. I saw that you've got the new book, The Nightmare and the Midnight Rider, ATR transcript series. And that really looked pretty cool. So what's that one about? Maybe you could, what's the idea of that? And maybe after I read it, I ordered it on Amazon. maybe we can talk about that book at some point in the future. But what's the new book about?
Well, that one, that's a transcript of one of the podcasts that I had done more recently. And it's interesting. It has to do with a little something called the etheric double. Now, this is something that would require a great length of detail to go through talking about. But essentially, what that book and the episode I did about it has to do with spiritual attachments and possession, and how it relates to the horse symbology. How the human being becomes a horse to a disembodied spirit rider through the etheric double. So essentially, that's what that's about, because they talk about this in the Voodooan culture and various other cultures around the world, where they point to the horse as being an important symbol here. And I also think that it has a lot to do with what the symbol of the Templars represents. Do you know what the symbol of the Templar is?
It's just the cross, right?
No, two knights riding on one horse.
Oh, okay. I
Two
didn't know.
people. That's one of the main symbols of the Templars. Well, this has to do with a spiritual attachment, an egregore of sorts that attaches itself to the individual, or that's what I think was represented in the Knights Templar symbol of the one horse with the two riders. So it's this spiritual attachment or association, and that represents the egregore of the organization, the Templar organization, which was later identified by many who research these things as a spirit being known as Baphomet. That is the
Whoa.
egregore of the organization. So that has to do with that. But this is actually kind of what I was able to ascertain about how this essentially functions as far as spirits attaching themselves to people with all of that.
Oh, and they definitely do. I mean, I see it now, but not as well. But when I was a kid, I could see. I actually saw that happening. You know, not necessarily like light forces, although they were there. But I would see I call them ghouls, the little small dark etheric beings that can jump between people. And as a little kid, it really freaked me out. I'm not going to kid you, you know, but I can attest that stuff is real. Yeah.
Yes, there's a reality to all of these different spiritual things that most people don't even want to talk about or acknowledge in the modern era. And that's kind of one of the things I'm trying to break down the walls of, is making it okay to talk about this stuff, because there's real powers at play here, real spiritual forces at play that have a very real influence in this world.
And
And you
maybe,
can know
yeah.
more about them and find out more about them. So there's a lot of literature about this within the occult fraternities and secret society groups that aren't available largely to the public until just recently through the advent of the internet. So
Yeah. And so, yeah, I've had you forever. I definitely don't want to keep you all night. You've been gracious with your time for sure. And so, of course, your main website is Alchemical Tech Revolution, right?
yeah, www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com.
Yeah. And for,
Easy to find, not as difficult to type, or not as easy to type in the browser though.
yeah. And there it links to tons of content right there. And of course, it links to your Substack and your Patreon. And so, yeah, thank you so much for your time tonight. And hope to have you on again sometime. We could deep dive into your new book after I get it and read it. But
Yeah,
also,
man.
so
Sounds good.
it's really like to give people kind of a little bit of inspiration, which is like the idea. I think maybe like where we kind of started, where I mentioned like maybe the most revolutionary thing you can do is just be awake, because if you're listening to this, this is the only crazy people listen to this podcast, so they're awake, and really cultivate that. And that's probably the most revolutionary act you can do right now to get to the other side, to let the civilization fall and get to the next one and check it out. Would that be a good course to take? Just focus on that inner Christ, the I am, whatever, if you want to call it Sophia, whatever it is, but be there and hang out with it every day for some time in a concerted way.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it's about getting your relationship right with God and getting your mind and spirit right within yourself. And actually, it's okay to look at this stuff. It's okay to acquire knowledge about spiritual things, and that's something that has had a veil over it for a very long time. And many of the religious systems and the social engineers of this world have kept that veil over the eyes of people for far too long. They don't want you to think in terms of spirituality or spiritual things, or acknowledge the existence of spiritual things, because that threatens their power, their grip on power in this world. So, yeah, it's a good place to start. It doesn't hurt to have an open mind, listen to stuff like this. You don't have to agree with it. Don't believe anything I tell you. Go research for yourself. That's what I
Yeah.
tell everybody. You'll be amazed at what you find.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all waiting for you, and it'll be glad that you showed up. It will be. It'll thank you for checking it out. Okay, well, yeah, this has been Radiant Creators, and we've been talking to the amazing Wayne McRoy, and definitely check him out. And hopefully, we talk again soon. I'm going to end the stream, and